So, hey, welcome to another edition of SaaS Builders. I'm hanging out with Mikey Merrill. He's I found him a few years ago. Actually, I remember reading the original release of, hey, I'm going to be the first public person in the world. I checked it out. True enough, he was the first public. I mean, you can like buy shares in a person. How does that work? So tell me more about you and everything.
So it started out as this idea of, I was working with a lot of friends on various projects online. And I was like, how do I have like a single entity that people can kind of come in and out of?
Wow.
Because sometimes people are like participating with their time and energy, and sometimes like, oh, we all need to go together and buy some equipment to do something. And this was all like stuff that was happening in our kind of off time. We had day jobs. So I don't know, at some point it just hit me that I was like, oh, corporations have kind of solved this problem of like how people work together, right? So I decided, all right, I'll just be a corporation and people can put money into this system by buying shares. If they ever want to get out, they'll just sell to someone else who wants to get in. And then that way there's this kind of pool of money that we can kind of collectively decide what to do with it. So then I was like, so everyone, whenever we were going to spend money or do a project, that'll be a vote.
So wait. Before you can even like see a movie, people have to vote on it?
Well, okay, so originally this was all like, are we gonna like kick off this little website project or do something like that? So it was very like internet project based idea. This was like in sort of 2000, I guess like mid 2000, like 2008 or something, yeah. So then what happened was people started getting more interested in my personal life and control of that, with the idea that like what I do and what movies I see, and if I move in with my girlfriend or these other kind of things are going to impact my project life. And so someone was like, hey, shouldn't we be able to vote on that stuff? So I like to think of that as sort of the invisible hand of the market, sort of like moved it from projects to personal life. And so over the years, it's kind of developed until now. I put my rule to put something up for a vote is if it's something I would ask my friends advice for, it's a shareholder vote.
That's actually kind of brilliant, because then it's almost like when you're on one of those game shows and you ask the audience.
Yes, yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's like wisdom of the crowd kind of stuff,
right?
Yeah. So it's a crowd that I then rank based on how many shares they have. So if you have a lot of shares, you have a lot of influence, and if you don't, you have a tiny bit of influence, which there's some inherent unfairness in that, but also it's skin in the game. So I used to say I was prank proof, because people would talk about like, oh, I'm going to come in, buy a bunch of shares and then vote that you kill yourself, right? That's always the joke. And I was like, well, that would be very expensive and it would make all of my friends very rich, because you'd have to buy so many shares to do it. But then there have been a couple votes where I think that my shareholders were kind of pranking me. So they made me, I tried to do polyphasic sleeping.
Oh, right.
It didn't work so well. It's where you sleep, you take little naps around the clock, and the idea is
that's hard.
I don't think it's real. I think it's a fake thing.
Yeah, I really do.
Yeah, so
I tried that too when I was a kid.
Yeah, I kind of slowly went crazy, and I was like, okay, we're giving this stuff. But other than a couple things like that, it's mostly been things. A good shareholder question is something I'm actually struggling with of whether or not to do. I mean, and it's big decisions and small decisions. So the most recent one, I've been doing this shareholder roadshow and going around and meeting with shareholders, and I've been visiting all these like small businesses. And it just feels like the way I'm finding them is usually on these big giant platforms like Yelp and Google and things like that. I hate those platforms because I feel like they sort of prey on those small businesses.
They do.
They kind of eat up their SEO and make them dependent on there. At the same time, it's a great way to push attention and money to those small businesses. So it's like, does my anti-large platform, is that more important, or is it my love of small businesses more important? So I was like, I don't know. So I put it up for a vote, and everyone was like, do the practical thing, help the small business, write a nice review. So
nice.
Yeah, so then I'm resolved. I don't have to worry about it anymore and think about it. I'm just like, that's what I'm going to do now.
That's great.
Yeah.
Come to think of it, that's really great and really cool that you built this platform over the last few years. So one thing I did notice is that it's really hard to kind of keep your platform up to modern times.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we started in 2008. I paid a friend $500 in cash and $500 in shares to build this site. It's a Ruby on Rails project. It was his first time ever doing anything on Ruby on Rails.
Wow.
So if you go to the site, it still kind of feels like a 2008 website.
Very much so.
And now there's another shareholder who does a lot of all of the technical like maintenance on it, because I'm not a developer. We'll talk through the difficult upgrades and things like that. But you forget that just maintaining a project over time, even if you're not making any changes, you're building this legacy of technical debt. Yeah, we are overdue for a big update. And I'm just like, man, it's so frustrating that we're going to put all this time and energy in to make it work the same, Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna he bills me and then we convert it to shares, and we have this like grant system where he gets paid in shares. And I'm like, all those shares are gonna go to just the same. It's like we're not even gonna add any new.
You're gonna have the same features that you had,
but
in 2008.
But it's up to date. It's more secure. And it's more stable. And all
That's great.
So but that frustration, I think, is something that people forget about maintaining a web project for a very long time, and it's something where you have to be, actively paying attention, or someone's going to come along and find an exploit and do it, which happened to me. I had a guy who's a professional bug hunter, bug bounty hunter. And I don't have a bug bounty. Somebody emailed and was like, hey, I found this thing. Here's the really technical information. I forwarded it to Aaron, and I was like, hey, can we look at this? And he's like, yeah, we'll add it to the list. And then realized that as he was figuring that out, he also gave himself like a huge chunk of shares. So my share graph was like fully out of whack. And he was like, sorry, I didn't know how to undo it after I found the exploit, but he did email it. So we corrected that, and plugged that one hole. But
yeah, that happens. And that's one thing. Microsoft and actually others are now starting to address that issue of how do you maintain code legacy. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that, that technical debt thing really has weighed heavily on even the large corporations. Imagine, the systems they built, right, that are now legacy. So .NET 6, one of the very next ones. But the next one's going to be .NET 5, and that'll be the interim release. But .NET 6, which is now going through testing, it's going to be one of those ones that you can just write once and then forget about it for a long time. Yes, and it'll run on everything: iOS, Windows, whatever you got, it'll run. And so you don't have to write it, which is what we're doing now. Many times you have to write it for the web, and then you have to have a special one for the iPhone, and so on. The Android, it has another one. To be able to write once and use anywhere is a huge capability. Not even really Java has that right now. Java has a lot of problems even there. I believe also one of the next versions, if I remember correctly, of PHP, they were working on trying to do the same kind of a thing, to where you can write once and use everywhere. So it is underway, and not quite here yet, but that is a fix that'll be coming.
I mean, it's really interesting because even like I had a game out years ago on the App Store on Apple, and there was a change that was made that was like, unless you go back, update your code, it disappears, kind of thing. And it's like, and it's always such a frustrating feeling to have like, wait, you're making a change, but like why should I have to go back and address those things? And at the same time, as a user of those platforms, I like that
you like the
features and all those kind of things. So trying to balance that is like, from the developer side, but also the user side, be like, again, that constant maintenance thing, it makes it hard. It makes it hard to keep up.
Yeah, and that's been one of the problems with the IT treadmill. And it is being addressed. And not only that, and you go, well, we don't have enough developers for everything. They've even been working on that a little bit in GitHub now. They have an AI that will help you write code. So you can start, writing something, and it's like, I think you're trying to build this whole function. Whoa, hey, hold on here.
It's like having Stack Overflow, like someone looking over your shoulder. It's like EATU programming or something. Yeah, that's wild.
So we'll be able to create code faster. That's actually more secure. Because that code will be, already secure, vetted, everything known to work, all that stuff. So there's been a lot of emphasis on trying to improve both developer quality and to improve the overall platform to make it work everywhere, without having to do this IT treadmill. And between that and cloud computing, really, you don't have to have a super powerful computer anymore. I mean, you can run everything on a tablet.
The one thing, one funny aspect about that is in traveling is when you suddenly lose internet connection somewhere, in between towers, and it's the so my girlfriend and I, we each on a different network. I think she's on AT&T and I'm on T-Mobile, and we keep being like, oh, we should combine because we'd save money. But it's so nice to have somebody who has coverage when the other doesn't, and those overlaps are sometimes just enough. But I'm like, it's like, oh, how much is that worth? Like, is it worth the full amount, or But yeah, once, but yeah, but most of the time you're in a city with 5G or in someone's house or your house with Wi-Fi, so it's no problem. But yeah.
And I think with 14, it wasn't going to be this release, but I think the very next release, Apple's going to add that satellite.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you'll have coverage no matter where you are.
Yeah.
So we're starting to move towards that always online world.
Yeah, which is great because it just means less bulky stuff, smaller, faster connections, and then being able to use all these tools that don't use a lot of space on your device, and having access to that full amount. Like sometimes in the car trying to play a song and being like, oh, I'm out of coverage, I can't download it, I can't play it, even though I subscribe to the service. I have to go back to my downloaded playlist, which I've heard a number of times already. So yeah, that ability to just have it all the time is pretty. It's like, I feel like we're already there as far as expectation, but we're not quite there as far as delivery. So
yeah, it's close.
Yep.
Just in a couple of years. I mean, we're like
totally.
that close, which is amazing when you think about it. Back in 2008.
Yeah.
Right. Putting up a website is like, who's going to use it?
Yeah.
Just a couple of people. No.
Exactly. Well, and even to go further back to like now everything is on these giant platforms, like social media platforms and things like that we publish out to. And I'm wondering, like, do you see that changing? Like, because from an IT perspective, it's like they're maintaining it, which makes it easier, right? I can just put my stuff on there, but then you also have less control. So I'm wondering when that starts to fracture, and when we go from these bigger monoliths, are we going to find the smaller individual instances?
I think we're going to see a lot more marketplaces over the upcoming years. Shopify has already made huge inroads. Their latest Shopify Plus platform, it's actually international now.
Okay.
So you can put a product on there, and you don't have to worry about where the country comes from, which is something not even Amazon does.
Yep.
All right. So, I mean, it's sort of think of like the eBay global shipping program, but combined with like an Amazon store power.
Yeah.
And it's a huge. It's huge.
Yeah. Watching Shopify dominate that world of essentially the indie businesses, stores, has been amazing. Like, I worked for this e-commerce company for a while. It was doing some add-on stuff for Shopify stores, and I had no idea how long that long tail was, and it's amazing. And I wonder if they're that international focus, because they're a Canadian company, I think. I think they're out of Canada.
Yeah, they have Canadian customers, actually customers all over the world.
Yeah, but as far as like their headquarters, but it's just like
Shopify Canada.
Yes, I think that gives them. I wonder if that gives them a more global perspective.
Yeah, those Canadians, they're going to take over the world. But yeah, no, the thing is, I really think things like malls are going to really decline. I talked to somebody that's a heavy-duty investor type, and he said the only sector that almost anybody's putting new money into is technology. Retail, they're taking money out of. Big time.
Yeah.
And
even commercial real estate.
And even commercial real estate, they're pulling out.
Yeah, the pandemic made that way more riskier, whereas that seemed like a safe place to put money for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, the commercial RE is down. But then I go, well, you got all these amazing malls. I'm surprised nobody sees it or wants to do something about it. I mean, imagine if you could go to a mall, don some VR gear, and play some like real life, almost like Star Wars Rebel Troopers.
Yep. There was a company, we did something very similar to that in LA. They have a couple small places where you put the headset on, and then it's you and some friends in the virtual world, and it's kind of that mixed reality where they're the real wall and the, and then it's almost like virtual painted through the headset, so you can feel things and hold things, but you're that mixed space. It was really interesting, and it was we actually did the Star Wars one. It was super fun.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I think, imagine you could do that in a mall.
Yeah.
Where you could explore some alien landscape or whatever.
And the idea that you could do
or go back to 1942
exactly
or
like,
whatever.
oh, it's Star Wars. Oh, now it's now it's Columbus.
Right?
Now
I mean,
it's,
the malls are huge. So you can have all these different zones that play Jurassic Park
and
whatever.
Yeah, and location wise, you're already in the center of commerce of whatever area you're in. Yeah. There was a thread somebody started on this little message board I was on of show pictures of your childhood mall, and it was very interesting to see kind of the historic like kind of 80s heyday photo compared to the current, and it's like it used to be all these big stores and a full, all these like full go in sit down restaurants, and now it's like a really sparse food court and maybe like a GNC store, and like they're empty.
Retail is dying.
Yeah.
And I mean, because of Amazon, because of convenience. I mean, with Amazon now, I'm working with another customer, turning things into 3D dresses and things like that. So imagine, you can just tap and you can see how you look in something. You can actually explore and interact with the dress, and that reduces returns and everything else. You tap a button and it shows up. It's amazing.
And once it's automated, that you just hang it up, scan it, and it's on there. It's not like a whole
exactly.
process. Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. It's turning into that light speed type of thing. And the folks that are trying to do the retail thing, they're behind. They really are.
Do you think that it's going to become a split where there's still, I feel like, or maybe I just want there to still be like the high touch retail experience.
There's going to be gathering places.
Okay.
All right. That's what we need more of. We don't need a mall.
Right.
To buy stuff. We need a place to meet and explore and do things.
Right.
Which is more natural to human affinity than just going somewhere to buy something.
Right. Yeah. What does that look like? It's like we've been so, I feel like, especially with like the DTC companies, Instagram, all these, we all think, and especially as a publicly traded person, I think of everything through the lens of like commerce and economics and capitalism. And so to think about what are those meeting places if they're not meeting.
They can still be, think of like a premium gathering place, which has a lot of natural lighting and, maybe different types of plants or whatever, beautiful landscape, even Disney-fied landscapes or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, there could be all of those kind of premium gathering spaces where you can work and live and converse and do things.
Yep.
Rather than, that's been the thing. We've been having this heavy duty emphasis on commerce that I think we lost sight of, the end result, the customer.
Well, historically, it feels like there was a role for that with like church and these fraternal organizations and some of these other really, really hierarchical establishments that people are like less interested in that style of entity.
It's not that, it's just,
exactly.
Me and maybe 10 of my best friends, we want to meet up here and do something.
I have a friend that's part of a group they're basically renting these like pretty small places. I think they're just in New York now, and it's basically just a pool table. It's not a whole pool hall, but it's that kind of thing of like you and some of your friends get together. Here's this space. There's something to do. Even if you're not that great at pool, it's like you're just hanging out kind of thing. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. You could see almost like that, like not quite Airbnb, not quite WeWork kind of thing.
Exactly. And then if you look at gaming, there's already something that's been largely perfected. The whole clan concept, where you have guild halls and things like that. And people pay good money for some good guild halls.
Yeah.
And there's some very large, 1,000-person clans.
Yeah. And they
really make it work.
In-person meetups and
they have in-person, and that's what I'm saying. They have an in-person meetup at this crappy venue, and you look at their guild hall, and it's like this exotic thing, and you're like, there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
And imagine if they could bring that guild hall into reality somewhere.
Yeah.
What they would pay to make that happen.
Yeah.
Whether it be AR or whatever. There are ways. I saw this beautiful AR on this book cover. And I was like, oh my God, it's like this moving book cover and everything. And it was just gorgeous. So I'm really thinking we're going to be seeing a lot more of that AR, VR over the next 10, 15 years. And I think the people that want to even have a good success in retail are going to be catering to that type of lifestyle.
Yes.
And the transactional retail,
like restaurants and a lot of these places that are even designed for commerce are building and designing for Instagram photos, right? Like these kind of murals, these kind of things to attract people to take the photo to post online. That feels like the halfway between
Exactly.
where we are and where we're going kind of thing.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think it's there's part of me that and especially having being in the midst of this road trip around everywhere, it's really fun to find these little pockets and hidden places, and I think that will always exist. But at the same time, getting to meet up with my essentially virtual community of people and getting to meet them face to face of a relationship that started, when did you first buy shares?
Oh, I don't know. God, 5-6 years ago.
Yeah. So
I just buy a little bit at a time.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, and we've conversed on and off for that entire time. This is the first time we've met up in person. And I think having that where it's you open the door and I was like, oh, it's it just feels like, oh, I'm just going over to my friend's house, even though we've never, physically met, has become a wildly more normal experience than when probably both of us started hanging out online in the early days.
True story.
That's a bit, again, that is going to transfer and get even further that way. It'll be weird in the future when we meet and we've been interacting as whatever avatars. It's oh, that's what you really like.
Yeah, right. That'll probably be next, the whole avatar thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been real great to hang out with you. It's been fantastic. And hey, if you want to find out more about this guy, even buy shares, go to kmikeym.com. The link will be at the bottom of the show. But yeah, he's just a fantastic individual all the way around. And if you follow the votes, I just been the most informative thing, just following the votes. What do people think about different things?
And there's been some really great arguments about some really dumb stuff, which is always really, it's pretty interesting. So it's fun to have a wide range of views, that don't, and so you get a lot of someone's really passionate about this one part of a question, and things like that. So, and it tends to be a really tech savvy audience overall. And so I get a lot of people talking about little even tweaks to the system and things like that. So yeah, it's fun. I encourage people to participate. You can make an account and not even buy a share.
Right.
You still get the emails.
All right. Well, good to see you, man.
Yeah, great to see you.
Thanks.
Absolutely.